Okay, so um, we all love a good myth, right? Especially one that stuck around for centuries, like this whole Persephone and Hades thing.
Right.
And we all know all the basics, right? Like pomegranates and kidnapping and all that.
Yeah, the classic story.
But what if I told you there's so much more to it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we're going way beyond the surface today.
Yeah, and that's what's so fascinating about diving deep with these excerpts from Persephone and Hades. A love between life and death, the untold story of regret and power. It really makes you reconsider those assumptions and see why this myth is still so powerful today.
Yeah, it really makes you question everything you thought you knew about it.
Yeah.
Because in these excerpts, Persephone isn't just like some damsel in distress. She's
Right.
thoughtful, she's questioning, she's really aware of all the expectations on her as Demeter's daughter.
Oh, for sure.
There's even this one line that really struck me where she's wandering in the fields and she's thinking about like the meaning of her existence. And it's so relatable.
It really is. It speaks to that universal yearning we all have, right?
Yeah.
That desire to understand our place in all of this, to search for something beyond just our everyday lives.
Totally. And for Persephone, it's that longing that draws her to that forest on the edge of her mom's lands.
Right to the edge of what she knows.
Yeah, it's even described as a place where light meets shadow.
Oh, wow.
She's not kidnapped.
Yeah.
She's drawn to this mystery.
Yeah.
It feels so deliberate.
It's fascinating because she actually tells Hades, she says, I must understand the darkness if I am to truly know the light. It's not about rebelling. It's a thirst for understanding.
It's that urge we all have to ask why, to go deeper into the unknown, even if it makes us a little uncomfortable.
Totally.
But that choice, it comes with a price.
It always does.
And speaking of challenging expectations, the text paints a very different picture of Hades than like the typical power-hungry god of the underworld.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Forget that Disney villain. This Hades is described as calm, his gaze steady and thoughtful. There's even this sense of loneliness surrounding him that really adds a new layer to his character.
It's true. He's almost intrigued by Persephone's desire to understand the darkness.
Yeah.
When he asks, you seek what others fear, why? It's not threatening. It's
Right.
like he's genuinely curious.
It makes you wonder what stood out to you about that initial encounter.
Yeah, what do you think?
Because it challenges our perception of power, doesn't it? Hades, in this story, he represents order, not just darkness. He embodies death and rebirth, which can seem scary, but it's as natural as life itself.
And he doesn't react to Persephone like a typical captor either.
No, he does.
He sees a reflection of his own isolation in her.
Yeah.
Like even gods crave connection and understanding.
It really humanizes him in a way that we don't usually see. It suggests that even with all that power, there's still that yearning for something more. And it's this shared longing that forms the basis for their connection.
Okay, but that's just the start of their story, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because their connection, it's what sets off this whole chain of events with consequences that neither of them could have predicted.
It's like a domino effect.
Exactly. One small choice leading to these huge ripples that impact everyone around them.
And that's where we really get into the myth's exploration of regret and growth and the true weight of our choices.
And that's where we're headed next time, right?
Yes, indeed.
From this initial encounter into the fallout and all the consequences.
Exactly, because in myth, like in life, even the smallest choices can have massive unintended consequences. So last time we were talking about how Persephone going to the underworld wasn't like some escape room situation.
Yeah.
It actually changed her, like, deep down.
Totally. And the text doesn't describe the underworld as like this horrible, scary place either.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It actually emphasizes this like kind of beauty in it, this realm of order and understanding, you know?
Yeah, and that's where she starts to thrive.
Right. The more she learns from Hades, the more she understands how life and death, light and darkness are all connected.
It's so different from that like good versus evil thing we always see.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right.
This story makes us think past those simple labels. But we also have to remember those consequences.
Right.
Demeter's grief is huge.
Right.
And the earth, it's hurting without Persephone.
It's like that butterfly effect, you know?
Exactly.
One choice, even if it comes from a good place, it can have huge ripple effects. Makes you really think about the weight of our choices.
It really does. And that's where the regret comes in.
Yeah, both Persephone and Hades start to realize they've caused some unintentional pain.
It's like Persephone feels responsible for her mom and how out of balance everything is.
And then there's Hades, who never wanted to cause this turmoil.
Right. What's interesting is that we see him struggling inside.
Yeah.
He's not this evil villain loving the chaos. He's actually feeling the suffering around him.
It's kind of refreshing, honestly.
I think so too.
Oh.
Seeing Hades show empathy,
Makes him more believable.
totally. He's realizing that even love, even connection has a price.
It adds a whole other side to his character.
It does.
But-
And it makes these mythical characters feel more human.
Yeah, like they can make mistakes too. And then there's Zeus who steps in.
Oh, yeah, gotta love a little Zeus intervention.
Right. He wants Persephone back to fix the earth. But she's different now.
Totally. She's not that same goddess who first wandered into the forest.
Mhm.
She's learned so much, seen so much.
And of course, we can't forget about those pomegranate seeds.
Oh, right. Those tiny little seeds with huge EE implications.
They tie her to the underworld in a way that can't be broken.
Exactly. But here's the thing. She doesn't just give up. She takes control. She
Right.
realizes it's not about picking one world over the other.
It's about making space for both.
Yes. And that's a powerful message for all of us.
Absolutely. Even when things seem impossible, we can still shape our own destinies.
It's about balance, isn't it?
Totally. Recognizing that we're made up of all these different, sometimes contradictory parts, and Persephone choosing her own path, that's what leads to the changing seasons.
Oh, yeah. That's such a beautiful way to show that cycle of life, death, light, darkness. It's like
Yeah.
even in the hardest times, there's always hope for something new.
It makes you wonder why this story still resonates with us today.
Maybe it's because we see ourselves in their struggles, that
Yeah.
search for balance, that desire to understand the consequences of our own choices.
It's like looking in a mirror in a way, seeing those same struggles reflected back at us.
That's the beauty of mythology, right? It connects us to something bigger than ourselves while reminding us that we're not so different after all.
Definitely. But there's something else we haven't talked about yet.
Oh, you're right. There's one more layer, a concept that weaves through the whole story.
It helps us really get what Persephone and Hades went through.
And that, my friend, is the concept of duality. But I think we should save that for next time. Give everyone a little something to think about.
So last time we were talking about how going to the underworld, it really changed Persephone,
Yeah, it wasn't just about escaping. It transformed her.
Exactly. And I think this idea of duality we touched on, it's a big part of that.
It's huge. It's not just about Persephone's choice, but who she becomes because of it. And Hades, too.
Right. We've talked about how this text gives us such a different view of Hades, not just your typical bad guy.
Totally. But this idea of duality, it takes it even further. Yeah. He's not just the god of death. He represents something much bigger.
It's like night, that darkness for there to be light. Right. They can't exist without each other.
Exactly. Hades, he's order, he's structure, that whole cycle of things. Death seems scary, but it's just as natural as life is.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. So Persephone, all about springtime and new beginnings, she's only half of the picture.
Exactly. So when they come together, it's more than just a love story. It's like this huge cosmic dance.
Yeah.
Makes you think, right, don't we all have those opposing sides within us?
Totally. And the way they change, it reflects that. She doesn't just have to pick one or the other, being a goddess or a queen.
Right. It's about understanding that those different sides were always there inside of her.
And for Hades too, right? He starts off so isolated, everyone's afraid of him. But with Persephone, we see a different side.
Yeah. He's able to feel deeply, to be vulnerable. He's not just some ruler. He wants connection, understanding.
It's like they push each other to grow, to become more than just those simple labels.
Yes. And they become more authentic, more complete because of it.
It's funny, these myths, they're these grand stories, but with very human experiences at their core, aren't they?
Absolutely. That search for who we are, for balance, how love and loss shape us, that's something we can all relate to.
It's true. They're like reflections of our own lives. And Persephone and Hades show us that real growth comes from accepting all those different parts of ourselves.
Yes. Not shying away from the complexity of it all. It's not about easy answers. It's about embracing all those different sides.
Which is so important, especially now when everything feels so black and white. It reminds us that the good stuff, it's in those gray areas, in between the extremes.
Absolutely. Be more curious about those gray areas in ourselves and in the world around us.
It's like we said at the beginning, everyone thinks they know this story, but looking closer, there's so much more there. It's more nuanced, more complex, honestly, more human than I ever expected.
That's what happens when we dive deeper, right? New perspectives pop up, even in these ancient stories.
Yeah. So to everyone listening, the next time you hear a story you think you know, ask yourself, what if there's more?
What's hiding beneath the surface, just waiting to be discovered?
Because staying curious, being willing to dig a little deeper, that's where things get really interesting.
That's where real understanding and maybe even some personal growth can start.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Persephone and Hades. Hopefully this sparked some new ideas, challenged what you thought you knew.
Gave you a few things to think about.
Exactly. Until next time, may your own journeys be full of wonder, discovery, and the courage to embrace all those different parts of yourselves.
Beautifully said.